today. We're going to be going through nonprofit funds, which, some of you I think have heard of before. Some of you might already be doing something for investment management. But we just want to run through a quick overview of what nonprofit funds are, and, how they can help your organization, whether you're exploring a change in investment strategy or just beginning to think about long-term sustainability. We just want to walk you through what a nonprofit fund is, how it works, and what a partnership with ECCF looks like in practice. And we'll leave time at the end for Q&A. So, Rebecca, next slide. Sorry, I'm going to try to. So, just to let you know who will be presenting today, I'm Jen Mayo. I'm the Director of Strategic Giving here at ECCF. I've been here for almost 5 years, and I work with donors, professional advisors, small businesses, and nonprofits in Essex County to help them access the charitable giving funds we have at ECCF. And I will let Beth introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Beth Francis. I am the nonprofit fund advisor here at ECCF. I have been with the Community Foundation for, gosh, a little over 8 or 9 years now. I was the former CEO here at ECCF, retired, stepped back, and getting to do all this fun work as in serving our nonprofit community as the nonprofit fund advisor. So we'll tell you a little bit more about my role and how I can help you with your nonprofit fund here at ECCF.
All right, next slide. So just a quick high-level overview of ECCF. I know a lot of people in this Zoom room are familiar with ECCF. You've worked with us in many different capacities, but just a quick reminder of who we are and what we do. And also, hot off the press, a new mission statement for everybody, which I hope that you see here at the top. And, just it signals a change to how we're thinking about working together, and how we do and how we support that is in the details here. So ECCF stands with our community, sparking generosity and collaboration to address our greatest needs and unlock opportunities for all today and tomorrow. And the way that we support that mission is really through three core competencies. The first is by managing and investing charitable funds. You can see our fund types here in that circle. We have donor advised funds, we have scholarship funds, and we have nonprofit funds that we're going to talk about today. But in total, we have over 350 funds in our family, and that totals about 150 million of assets under management. As you know, we work with the nonprofit community in Essex County to strengthen and support, offer capacity building. You can see that through our Institute for Trustees, through our M&T Bank workshops, and also through our direct grant making through our discretionary funds. We've provided 169 million of funding, over 18,000 grants awarded through our discretionary funds into the community. And then the last kind of thing that we do here at ECCF is our community leadership and systems change work. You might have accessed some of our collaborative grant making through our digital equity program, our COVID response fund, and our most recent initiative, our climate resiliency fund. And what we do is we work together in an ecosystem to really get the capital out where it needs to be on the ground with a multitude of partners. And you can see our impact of over 316,000 people have been, have worked through that systems change effort and been impacted by that. So next slide. So really what a nonprofit fund is the combination of two of ECCF's core competencies, investing charitable funds and strengthening nonprofits. And truly what we're trying to do here is, say to the nonprofits in the community, that we're already working with, we're already supporting, and saying we all also have this investment management capability, and let's combine them together and see how we can create something that's, a benefit to you as you think about your investment strategy and long-term sustainability. Next slide.
I think that's me. So I'll take over, Jen. So at ECCF, we partner with many nonprofits in all sorts of capacities. But in our community, we offer investment services wrapped with extensive and meaningful learning opportunities. So as a nonprofit fund in the community ourselves, our goal is to provide service to our nonprofit fund partners that reflect the type of support your organization needs. So this takes shape as practical guidance for executive directors, development directors, and finance staff. We'll share a little bit more about the details later, but just to kind of give you the highlight our scope of impact with our nonprofit funds, we have over 357 funds, as Jen mentioned, 45 of which are what we call nonprofit funds. And some of these are reserve or rainy day funds. Others are meant to grow the principal for specific programs or initiatives, and others yet are fully endowed for long-term sustainability at your organization. Our nonprofit funds come in all shapes and sizes, and they're from all around Essex County and from all sectors of the nonprofit community. Our nonprofit funds range in size and support of all the social sectors. So our smallest fund is around just under 25,000 that have plans to grow those with some legacy gifts that they're talking with. And our largest fund is 14 million. And so you might be asking, okay, well, what's the median? The sweet spot for us is around $150,000 for fund sizes, but we have many below that and many above that. So it's just to give you an idea of like where our nonprofit funds are in your peer group. So our nonprofit funds exist for many different reasons. Some had a donor or a group of donors who established an endowment specifically for their organization. Others had COVID funds or government funding, as an example, that came in, whether that was for crisis. A lot of people used the credits during COVID and opened funds for some long-term sustainability. They really wanted to make sure that they had assets in the future should there be another crisis like COVID. We'll just explain it that way. So some need investment management oversight that we provide. Others need access to our investment strategies like our ESG pool or our private equity. And some of our nonprofit funds, like the capacity building supports that we provide in addition to our investment services. So reasons might be different, but all share kind of this common theme is that they see ECCF as a partner aligned with their mission to improve the lives of those in our region. So there's an affinity to working with ECCF. We can go to the next slide, Rebecca, please. So let's just take a minute to get clear on what a nonprofit fund at ECCF is. So it's a charitable investment fund to support and sustain nonprofit organizations' medium to long-term operational goals, operations and goals, I should say. Nonprofits have choices when they select an investment partner. We know this, but ECCF has some kind of unique things. So, as Jen stated, we're already investing $150 million of charitable assets in the marketplace, right? So we have this core competency that we can provide to nonprofits. It's our expertise and our investment pools. But we also act like an outsourced investment officer so that you focus on your mission. Right? So things like investment reports, fund statements, analyzing where the market is and the kind of changes that should be made in the investment strategy. And I guess maybe last is equally important is that our mission, our very purpose is connected to the success of nonprofits doing important work in our communities. So we are aligned in your success. So it makes us a little bit different than what you might expect in an investment partner. I think we can go on to the next. Turn it over to Jen.
Perfect. Thanks. And I just want to be really clear here on how the structure works because it's pretty straightforward, but it's also raises a couple of important points here. So the way it works is that the nonprofit establishes a nonprofit fund. You work with us. We get to know you. We get to understand, where the gift is coming from. Is it from assets that you already have? Is it from a gift from a donor that's setting up this fund? We work together to decide what the spending policy will be. We'll talk about that in the next slide. And then you make the contribution into the nonprofit fund. You select one of our investment portfolios for that to be invested in. It should grow over time. And then you, as the nonprofit, request distributions that flow directly back to your nonprofit. So you can see here, it's this closed loop. Money comes from the nonprofit into the nonprofit fund at ECCF, and it flows only back to the nonprofit itself. And that is really important, right? This money cannot go to another entity. It cannot go to another purpose. It goes just back to your organization. And that's really important from a donor stewardship perspective. They really love to know that that structure exists, that there's the rigidity in that structure, that, we at ECCF will not take expenditure responsibility. So we won't say, okay, your donor has set up the fund for this specific purpose. That is for you and your board to manage. But what we do say is it can only go back to you. You can't request it to go to another organization or for, any other type of purpose. The second thing that's important to note here is that these assets remain under your control. We at ECCF, this differs from our other fund types where a donor advised fund or a scholarship fund, ECCF owns those assets. They're under our control. With an agency fund, which is technically what a nonprofit fund is, the nonprofit itself retains the assets on their balance sheet. They sit as both an asset and a liability on ECCF's balance sheet. So that means that you can request distributions when you want them. You can set up a spending policy based on what spending policy you want. And ultimately you can request to, full access to the balance of your fund if you so need it. Okay, next slide. So as I mentioned, when we work to open a nonprofit fund, we'll talk about what the needs are of this fund. And Beth ran through kind of the spectrum of nonprofit funds that we see. We have some that are set up for, a rainy day. We kind of think of those as a reserve fund structure. It's invested for growth, but it's accessible at any time. Your authorized representatives request a distribution. We process it and the funds come right back to you. We don't approve or monitor that spending. Your board's fiduciary responsibility remains the same. On the other end of the spectrum, we have what looks like an endowment. There are some organizations that are looking for permanence and looking to build that long-term sustainability. So in this case, the principal would stay invested long-term and the nonprofit would receive a steady annual distribution based on a spending policy. So you can kind of set up your nonprofit fund depending on what your needs are today or what you are anticipating your needs to be in the future. You can set it up based on what a conversation with a donor who may be seeding the fund is looking for. And to answer the question that I know many of you have, we have organizations that have both. We have some that as they build up a reserve balance, they say, you know what? We feel like this is a good amount that can sustain us through a rainy day. Can we move $50,000 to seed an endowment? Or they were happy with a reserve fund and they had a donor say, we want to make sure that you've got the long-term sustainability for your organization. Let's pair that with an endowed fund as well. So it's a spectrum and it's not an either or, it can be a both and as well. Next slide, please. And as Beth mentioned, this is what we do, right? ECCF is investing and managing 150 million of charitable assets. And I always want to make sure to emphasize that enough. Whereas other investment managers are managing money for a number of different purposes, right? Most of the time, they're not managing only charitable assets. Our investment policies, our investment strategy, and our investment committee is set up to steward charitable assets alone. And so that means that the way they think about risk, the way they think about growth, the way they think about the funds being used for future purposes is a little bit different. I always like to say it's not as if we're chasing alpha, right? We're not putting these funds at the most, extreme amount of risk. We want to ensure that long-term steady, stable growth, but we want to make sure that these assets are there in the future for the organizations that are relying on them for those charitable purposes. So we really take a holistic approach to investment management, and we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail on the next slide. So when we think about ECCF's investment strategy, I just mentioned this, but we're targeting steady asset growth while managing risk and cost. So we're truly focused on preserving and growing the real purchasing power of underlying assets, right? We want them to keep pace with the market. We want them to keep pace with inflation, but we don't want them to be put at unnecessary risk. This is what our investment committee is truly focused on, right? We have an all volunteer investment committee. It's people who live in the community, who are investment professionals with over 100 years of combined experience, and they manage to a board-approved investment policy statement. And what they do is they come up with pooled investment funds. So they determine an asset allocation strategy, and we put that 150 million to work into pooled investment funds, which means that nonprofits who join us through a nonprofit fund get access to a much wider portfolio of assets. So you're buying into a $150 million portfolio rather than the small individual account that you may be opening with another investment manager. That means we're going to have wholesale pricing. We're going to have economies of scale. We're going to have access to broader portfolio diversification and lower investment fees. The other thing we'll also have access to is perhaps some investment strategies that are only accessible at that large scale level. Something like impact investment or a private equity investment, which we can get into in detail in our next slide, please. So ECCF has two main investment portfolios. And when you set up a nonprofit fund, you can choose to be invested in one of these portfolios, or you can choose to split a percentage between both. We have what we call our general investment pool, and this is a globally balanced investment strategy with a small percentage of private equity. It's a 65% equity, 35% debt portfolio. So again, balancing that risk return portfolio there in terms of wanting to make sure that these assets are growing and keeping pace with the market, but also being really sensitive to the fact that they're charitable assets that organizations are relying on into the future. And you can see that portfolio has returned almost 16% over the last year. Our other portfolio is an ESG directed investment strategy. So that's comprised of funds and managers who invest in companies that focus on environmental governance and sustainability factors, and more of that proactive social responsibility. It has the same composition as our general investment pool of 65% equity, 35% debt, and it's returning 14%. And these returns are as of the end of January. Okay, next slide, please. And I'll turn it back over to Beth.
That pesky unmute button. Okay. I want to talk just about a couple things. Continuity being the first thing, and I think this is really important for if we have any board members on the call today. Board members transition, right? If best practices for boards is that there be turnover, whatever term limits you have. But oftentimes what happens with that is you will sometimes lose that person that had the deepest knowledge and experience on the investment or the finance committee, right? And so one of the things that I think is important for you to think about, and we've actually opened funds for this reason alone, is that we provide that continuity when nonprofit board transitions, or when staff turnover. You've got a new ED. The last one had a lot of investment experience. This one does not. So ECCF really can ensure that there's continuity built into your investment program. And we offer important oversight administration that's consistently upheld for your organization. We also provide the infrastructure and the backbone on the program management side. So with reports, um, Jen talked about how you can claim these assets on your books, even though the assets might sit with us for investments. There's a lot of auditor requirements to go with that. We take care of all of that and work directly with your auditors. We offer an online 24/7 portal access. How many times, if you're an ED on the call, how many times have you said, oh my gosh, I have my finance committee meeting tomorrow morning and it's 6 o'clock at night and you still didn't pull the most recent reports, right? Well, you have access to all of that with an online portal. And then, of course, there's also the performance reports and the analysis of our investment strategy as well that we can provide. Why don't we go to the next slide? So it's just giving you a little bit of a flavor for the things that we offer as the investment manager and the investment strategies that we have. As far as the fees go, right? Because nobody likes to talk about fees, but we are as transparent as we possibly can be, way more transparent than a lot of our peers. And we just like to make sure everybody has an understanding of management fees. And our fees cover the administrative costs, access to ECCF's nonprofit services support team, and the vast array of capacity building supports that we're going to talk about next. But these are our current nonprofit fund fees. You will pay an investment partner a management fee no matter who you choose. We just like to point out that our fees are a reinvestment in the community, as we too are a nonprofit that provides funding for our community leadership efforts that Jen talked about earlier, like our COVID work or our digital equity initiative or our climate resilience or the current one, which is the community response to federal funding grants. So when you're paying a fee, you can pay it to a commercial entity or you could pay it to an organization like us who's doing other important work in the community. All right, let's, Rebecca, if we can move forward, let's talk about what this partnership looks like when you have a fund here at ECCF. So we really strive to go deeper with our nonprofit fund partners. We really have built this effort kind of on a few key goals. So the first is we provide responsive service. We're here to help. We want to provide investment statements, performance reports, and answer general investment questions. I often get this, I'm smirking because how many of you have investment accounts that when you call, nobody calls you back? Because in their world, you're just this little fish in a big pond. But that's not the case here. While we do have an automated system, we have a receptionist who answers the phone when we're open. And we're always kind of mission aligned in making sure that we're responding to you in the way that you're responding to community. So the second thing is we build capacity support. So we get to know you on a deeper level when, you know, what are your achievements? What are your plans for the future and your challenges? And we provide capacity building supports that we hope help you and are informed by what it is that you tell us you need. I'll get into those in a minute. We'll go much deeper into those. The next is we create connection, and not just for the CEOs, but more importantly for your leadership teams and your board members. So while we all do something different in the social sector, we share a lot of the same challenges and have wisdom to share as well. We create a family of insiders in this safe space that we can learn and share together. And our final goal is a little bit of a selfish one. As a family member, we want to get close to you, right? We consider you a family. You're one of our 350 family funds. So we want to know what you know. We want to hear what you hear. and we want to worry about what you're worrying about. So uh, this number always shocks people, but we have about 4,000 nonprofits registered in Essex County. We cannot get truly engaged in a meaningful way with 4,000 nonprofits. As good as we hope that we are, we certainly can't do that, right? So we want the chance to pick your brain, ask you questions, validate or not our assumptions. And so this relationship is a symbiotic one that goes both ways. And all the things that you can inform us on helps our staff, improves our work, and helps make decisions about the future plans at ECCF. Okay, so let's jump into some capacity building. Can you go to the next slide, Rebecca? Thank you. If we haven't explained who Rebecca, the lovely Rebecca is, Rebecca Turner works with our grants team, and she also leads our big Institute for Trustees, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. But she leads a lot of the capacity building, and she's the guru of the nonprofit sector and great presenters and tailored curriculum and all those things. So thank you, Rebecca, for helping organize today. All right, let's jump into some capacity building. So here's, we talked about the investment side of the house. I'm going to talk a little bit about the capacity building side of the house, which is what I've been brought on to help grow here at ECCF. So it's very personal to me, and it's a lot of new things that we're launching right now. So on the left side of the slide, you're going to see just a couple of our most recent workshops, our capacity building workshops. These are only provided to our nonprofit fund partners. So we just did a session on talking complex assets with your donors, and we did a deep dive of all the things that you as development staff and executive directors need to know about accepting complex assets, and then how ECCF can partner with you on accepting some of those complex assets, things like stock transfers or real estate transactions or an array of other kinds of complex assets. And then we also just did another one on demystifying donor advised funds. A lot of our nonprofits are like, how do they exactly work? And how can we partner with ECCF on getting our brand and our awareness right up with donor advised funds, not just here at ECCF, but in the industry as a whole. So those are just two examples, but I want to focus on the right side of the screen as well, which are those other capacity building efforts. So we really we take seriously our outsourced investment partner role. So we offer capacity building supports to provide learnings. We've got an investments 101 coming up. We've got an ECCF performance on the pools that Jen just went over that we'll be doing in this summer to help our executive directors in particular understand the role of investments in their budgets. So we also, you also, when you become a nonprofit fund here, we also provide a free board registration. So free seat for your executive director and your entire board to attend the Institute for Trustees. I can't see everybody, so I would ask you to raise your hand if you've heard of our famous is the bad word, famous Institute for Trustees. We've done it for, I think it's like the 18th year this year. I'm looking at Rebecca, 17th year?
17th, yeah.
17th year. It's an entire series of workshops designed specifically for board members. Yes, executive directors and key leaders of the organization will benefit from it, but it's with a lens. We have 14 this year workshops. They're virtual. And so you get access to all of that for free, complimentary board registration. And then we also do all sorts of other, so with the Institute for Trustees this year, because we've been doing it virtual for so many years now, we're doing an in-person cocktail reception with a special thing just for Essex County nonprofits on advocacy strategies. So I can go more in depth than the Institute for Trustees, but we don't have enough time today. So I'm going to keep going. So, and we also provide an array of fundraising workshops that, that you get to help design and we deliver for you. And maybe it's a little bit easier if I show you all of these. So why don't we move to the next slide? I think it's important to note, like, we really do listen. We listen to what's important to you. We listen to um, what the needs are, and we build out capacity building that meets those needs. And so, what you see here is high level, just what we have on deck for 2026. Some of which I've already talked about. The first ones of the quarter have already happened. But we've got a lot coming up. We've got Planned Giving 101. We've got Are You Ready for an Endowment campaign, an endowment readiness checklist kind of workshop that we're doing. Investments 101 that we already talked about. But you can just run down the list and see and know some of the things that are happening. And again, we provide content on this, but we also create space for our nonprofit partners that come to these to learn from each other, meet each other, get at roundtables that share like the same topic area that you're challenged with and what's going on and what other ideas out there. And so for every one of these that you see here, we've also create space for relationship building that happens. Okay, let's keep going, Rebecca. So maybe just to recap the benefits, the capacity building benefits is that, we really are looking to be a partner as your investment partner. ECCF acts as a simple conduit to sustainable investment practices through our ESG pool and option. We find that many of our nonprofits select the ESG strategy as their investment strategy. So we always like to lift that up, and it is definitely a differentiator for a lot of folks. Fees are invested, you're going to pay fees. So those are invested back into the nonprofit community here in Essex County by allowing us to do our community leadership work. And that just the reminder that we are a natural mission alignment with your organization and what you're trying to achieve. We care about your success in achieving your mission because with a strong nonprofit sector, we all win here in Essex County. And so wanted to just kind of like recap a lot of the pieces that we've thrown at you today. I'll turn it over to Jen. Wrap us
Yeah,
up.
just one last slide, because I think it's always helpful to have some case studies to think about, well, what are other organizations doing, or why did another organization open a nonprofit fund? So we just wanted to highlight two case studies really quickly to show, there are people who come to us from very different background, size of organization, rationale, but they all find a home with our nonprofit fund. And so the first organization, it was a small organization, and they had a donor call them, and the donor wanted to transfer a good amount of publicly traded stock to start an endowment. And the organization said, oh my goodness, we have to take this money. But we don't know how to take this money. Not only do we not have a bank account or a brokerage account to accept publicly traded securities, we also don't have the administrative support in place to kind of manage this investment strategy. We don't know how to invest it. We don't know what that means from a reporting standpoint. And so they called us, which was great. And we said, well, good news. We can set up a nonprofit fund. And what ended up happening was that when we set up the nonprofit fund, the organization worked directly with the donor. They stewarded the donor's gift, but the gift actually came directly into the nonprofit fund. And that's a real benefit that some smaller organizations find, is that we can accept those publicly traded securities or other types of complex assets. Maybe you have donors calling you about cryptocurrency. We can do that too. It can come directly into your nonprofit fund and set the basis for either that kind of long-term rainy day funds or the basis for an endowment. The donor was absolutely thrilled because obviously they wanted this money to help support this smaller but growing organization over the long term, but they didn't want to create a burden on the organization. And the nonprofit was thrilled because now they have this structure in place. They had the seed for this endowment and they can now fundraise around it. They can say, hey, look what we've got. We've got an endowment. So put us in your wills, right? Talk about planned giving. So it's a win-win for everyone. The second example I just wanted to highlight is that, this was a larger community-based organization, had a robust board, a robust finance committee, and coming out of the pandemic, they had built up a significant reserve. And that reserve, the finance committee didn't want to put it necessarily in the brokerage account. They wanted to maintain the flexibility of it, but it was just sitting in a bank account, right? And I'm sure there's many of you sitting here thinking, oh boy, yeah, we have bank accounts that have a significant amount in it over and above what really we need. And that money is not working for you, right? Maybe it's in a CD, maybe it's making 3%, right? What are the other options out there? And so this organization opened a reserve fund at ECCF because the investment strategy and the mission alignment were exactly in line with what the organization was looking for. And I love this quote from the executive director. They said, I am the biggest fan of win-win-wins. When you can leverage good all around, why wouldn't you? It just made so much sense. We totally believe in ECCF as an institution, and it's a great steward not only of money, but the community too. So they were able to keep that flexibility that they wanted for those rainy day assets, increase significantly the investment returns of those assets, but also partner with a mission aligned investment partner. And so those, like I said, it's two different types of organizations coming to us for two different types of reasons. But just wanted to, kind of illustrate some examples of how nonprofits are helping nonprofits, how nonprofit funds are helping nonprofits in our community. And with that, I think we can open it up for our Q&A. And please feel free to ask any questions. We know this is a good amount of information. We tried to keep it as simplified as possible. One thing that I just want to say off the bat, because I'm assuming we'll get this question, is that the minimum fund size for a nonprofit fund at ECCF is $25,000. So like Beth said, we have a broad range. But the minimum is $25,000 to open one of these. So, thank you for joining us and opening up for questions.
I have a question here. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. The investment fees, I'm not familiar with what BP, 75 BP, what's...
Apologies, that is basis points. So that's 0.75%.
Okay. And I have another question. When you were talking about the endowments that you offer, you called it a quasi endowment. What's quasi about it? Is it can you take out the principal or no?
That is why, I might have Beth answer this one because she is designing a whole structure around it. So I'm going to turn it over to Beth.
Sure.
Yeah, so we look at it in terms of three buckets, right? So one, you have total access to the principal, to the income and the principal. We call it depleting, right? You can entirely. Or you can have you operate it like it's an endowment, but you still have access to all of the money, right? Where you want to put yourself on a spending policy as an example, right? So, but you want to operate it that way, but you want to leave some flexibility that you might have a crisis and you might need that, right? So we have the ability to operate it like an endowment, but also call it an agency fund so it still meets that assets and liability on our books so that you can count it as an asset on yours. And then you have a straight up, it's endowed. There's no question about it. You can only take whatever either your spending policy or our spending policy, and you never have access to the full amount of the balance of the fund because a lot of times that's a donor restriction that you might have, but also it's a board restriction that you created this in a specific way. Your board voted on that for a specific purpose, and so all three of those can fit within our nonprofit fund structure.
Okay. All right. Yep. Great. And I have how quickly can money be transferred? Say we've got a long-term fund with you. and we need some cash. How quickly can that happen?
Our finance team, I think Brett, our CFO, is on this call, would say we would love 10 business days to do that. The reality is we know specifically with our nonprofit funds that there are crises, right? So, but normally you would just give me a call. We would talk about the fact that you need it right away, and we would work out something to get those. I would say normally 2 to 3 business days. If it's a crisis, on an average, I need my 4.5% disbursement. It's about 10 business days for us to cut you a check for whatever grant distribution you need. And Britt, I think Britt's on the call. Did I get that right, Britt? But you just call us and we'll work together.
Yes, you did. I mean,
And
from our standpoint, we have grants that go out here every week. So if we get it early enough in the week, we can send a check, or we don't like to pay for it, but we will send a wire if it's an emergency.
like bank routing,
Yeah,
send it directly.
bank routing wire, send you guys a wire.
Yep.
Mhm. Okay. All right, thank you.
Emily, you have a question in the chat. So the question is, could you share whether ECCF follows a specific policy when making investment decisions? Does it depend on who you are working with? So actually, the way it works is that the way I like to talk about nonprofit funds is ECCF is managing 150 million of charitable funds, right? They're donor advised funds, they're our discretionary funds, they're scholarship funds, and nonprofit funds are essentially joining in, coming in alongside us in those investment pools. So the investment pools are actually ECCF's investment pools. They're managed, so we're following ECCF's board approved investment policy when making our investment decisions, and therefore the entirety of our charitable assets under management. So there are no individual investment decisions made on a fund by fund basis. That's why we keep talking about them as investment pools, because it is truly a pooled asset base that a nonprofit fund is joining into. Is that helpful, Emily?
Hey Jen, yes, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Silly question off of that. Would the ECF board be willing to share that written policy so that we could include it in our governing documents as well?
Yes, absolutely. We are happy to share our investment policy statement. And that's important, right? Because our investment policy statement, if you are a nonprofit fund, essentially is your investment policy statement. Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, thank you so much. And I appreciate it.
I think just one other thing, we didn't talk about it today, but when you have choices, right? You have the ESG pool, you have the general pool. We also have a money market pool, which, if you're in this for long-term growth, right? Money market, the other two pools are a more significant option. But we do have some nonprofit funds who look at the liquidity, right? They have liquidity policies, as an example, and they're very, I never know the right word, bullish or bearish, or on making sure that they have the fund structured in a way that meets their policy statements, right? As they should. But we do also have the money market. So we do have a couple of nonprofit funds that have their entire pool in the money market. So just want to point that out and share that also is the third pool. And you can do a ratio between the pools as well.
I had another question. Some of those past events that you've given, are they available online? Like the demystifying the deaths?
If it was a recorded session, we have them available for our nonprofit funds to share. So at the end of every session, our nonprofit funds will get an email from me. Excuse me, an email from me with the recording link. So
Okay.
yes, we have them available. Yep. And Paul, because a lot of this capacity building supports is a fairly new endeavor for us. We're building a digital library. So if you join us, right, as a nonprofit fund, we will eventually be able to make that digital library available to you. So even though you weren't here at the time, we can make sure that you have those. In the meantime, for all nonprofits, I'm doing a pitch, Rebecca. I would strongly encourage you to register for. You don't have to you don't have to be a nonprofit fund
Mhm.
to register for the Institute for Trustees. We partner with three other community foundations in the state. It's actually a statewide effort that Rebecca and ECCF actually runs for everyone. And so you can actually register. There's a fee to register unless you're a nonprofit fund for us, but it's well worth the money and you get an array of things. I don't know if DAFs are a part of this year's, but we do have them every once in a while in the structure. But a couple of the things that we've done specifically for our nonprofit funds, they are topics at the IFT. Okay.
Okay. Mhm. And do you have like an online portal or something if people just want to see what their balance is or?
Yeah, it's great actually. It's one of the features most people love. We give you a login and a password. You'll do a 15-minute, like you don't have to, but I offer a 15-minute tutorial that will Zoom together and we'll show you how it works. It has your fund statements every month. Your fund statement is uploaded. It's got the performance report link that automatically links you when you click it to our website for the most recent performance reports. It has a grant distribution history of every grant out of the fund that you made to yourself, and it has every contribution history in. So it's got all that stuff built into the portal.
Okay, nice.
And for those of you who have a rainy day fund and an endowed fund, because we have some of those, it's the same portal. It's one login. You just toggle between the two different funds that you have. So it makes it easy for accessing everything.
I have
I had a question. When somebody sends a stock, when they donate a stock, do you keep it as a stock or does it sell? Can you hold us?
It's in our investment performance. It's in our IPS that we will automatically liquidate. So as soon
Okay.
as the next once we know that we can attribute the gift to who it belongs to, we liquidate it the next day.
Okay.
We're in it for the charitable purpose of the cash.
Yep.
So we are not interested in holding it. We can talk about complex assets that your donors may have but our typical everyday go-to is in our policy is that we liquidate the next business day.
Okay, that's good.
I have a simple question. How do I get a recording of the session? I have to explain it to my finance committee. And
Yeah.
I've taken notes, but I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, we will send out the recording and the slides after
Great.
this. And
Thank you.
also, just as a PSA, all of, I think the theme that you've heard a lot is we're here with personalized responsive service. And that starts with your questions about what a fund is, how it could work, and trying to explain it to your board or your finance committee or your staff.
Yeah.
I am available. I do this. I go meet with boards or finance committees often. I'll run through a subset of these slides, and I'll be there as the first person to be able to answer those questions. So please view me as a resource in terms of bringing this option to your board or staff, and then that same personalized service will translate once the fund is open with the way that Beth will interact with you as well. So we really are here to help on both ends of the spectrum.
Thanks, Jane.
Any other questions? Well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us as we all recover from the blizzard. And I know I'm going to go look out at the 7 feet of snow piles that are in my driveway and try to carve them back a little bit after this. but we appreciate your time. And as we said, we are here to help. Please email us, call us with any questions, and we are available to you to come meet with you or to talk about anything in greater detail. And we will send out the slides and the recording when they're available. So, thanks. Good to see everyone. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.